this is like, what's that?
You're trying to hint at me to sponsor.
Sure, yeah, that was
Nope. Here's USB-C.
That's over here.
Yeah. Let's hope it works. Hell yeah.
Ta-da.
So yeah, that's for the stream. This is for like just overall being louder. So.
It's being streamed. All right, cool. Thank you.
Yep. No.
All right, hello everybody. My name is Sarah Jacobus. I graduated in May of 2018, so not all that long ago. I work at Microsoft. I'm a security program manager, and I work on the Microsoft Security Response Center team. So essentially, I work for Microsoft's bug bounty program. I was on the RC3 e-board as competition architect for a hot second, and I threw in a couple of questions throughout my presentation today, and I brought with me some Microsoft Challenge coins. For those of you who don't know, Challenge coins are coins that are handed out. They initially started out that people in the Army and that worked in the service would get Challenge coins, and it was kind of a way to maybe show your status or show a challenge that you completed. So we have these Microsoft ones, so I'm not going to attempt to throw them, but if you get any questions right, I'll leave them out on the table and you can come grab one afterwards. Also, another quick thing, so my goal here in this presentation, even though I work for Microsoft, I'm not looking to promote Microsoft specifically bug bounty program. I'm just trying to bring more awareness to bug bounty programs in general, not just Microsoft's. That being said, quick disclaimer that I had to put in here. The opinions in this presentation are mine, not Microsoft's. So yeah, our legal team makes us put in this for all of our presentations. All right, so first first question. Can anyone tell me what a bug bounty program is? Does anyone know? Yeah.
You submit vulnerabilities that you find to a company and they hopefully pay you.
Yes. Absolutely, great answer. So it is technically defined a crowdsourcing initiative that rewards people for reporting vulnerabilities that are found in company software. So this is usually in the means of money, but it can also be an acknowledgement as well, and I'll go into that a little bit later. So as security researchers, as students that are passionate about security, it is very likely that at some point in your career, you will find or come across a vulnerability in company software. This could be through a pen test, this could be by accident, something that you just come across, or this could be something that you're actively looking to find. So with this vulnerability, there's a couple things that you can do. The first is you can exploit it. For the purpose of this presentation, I'm just assuming that we're all white hat hackers here, and this is not something that we're looking to do. The next thing that you can do is you can publicly disclose this vulnerability that you found on a blog, on Twitter, on whatever means that you are looking to publicly disclose it. This is something that I really want to discourage you against from doing for two main reasons. The first is if you ever plan to participate in a bug bounty program, it is likely that publicly disclosing or dropping a 0 day on a company will blackball you from participating in these bug bounty programs. The other one, and this is something that I hadn't really considered until I started speaking to my team about this, but when you're posting these vulnerabilities online, this isn't necessarily like just for your street cred or showing off that you found this vulnerability. There are bad guys out there that are actively looking to find these O-days dropped and use them against companies and other governments. I know for us a big thing is that Microsoft has Windows, and our government primarily uses Windows. So if someone drops an O-day on Windows, they might think that they're just like going after Microsoft or going after Microsoft users, but this is actually a huge issue for the American government. Lastly, and this is what I'm here to talk to you guys about today, you can submit this vulnerability to a bug bounty program. So why participate? The first and maybe the most obvious is cash money. A lot of organizations will pay up to $200,000 or $250,000 for these vulnerabilities that you found. This isn't super common getting this big of a payout. I work for the online program, we probably see more like from the $1,000 to $5,000 range per bug reported. But we do actually have one of our main finders is a college student from the UK. He gets from us maybe about $100,000 a year just by participating from this program. So it is easy to get pretty big payouts very quickly. So the other main reason that you want to participate in these programs is getting acknowledgement. And the biggest acknowledgement that most people are after is a CVE. This is my second question. Does anyone know what a CVE is? In the back. Yes.
Oh, I have to answer? Oh.
Yeah.
It's a common vulnerability, something or other, and the CVE program is run by a MITRE, and you submit a bug, they say, good job, we verified it, here's your CVE number, and then you have to memorize it and put it on your resume, and then when people ask you what something cool you did, you'd be like, oh, well, I found CVE 2018, something, something, something.
Yes, exactly. So they are distributed by MITRE, and it's essentially a number that you are given for getting a vulnerability that you found fixed. So an important note or distinction to make about these CVEs is that they are only applicable for inbox products. They do not apply to pretty much any online products out there. So a CVE looks amazing on your resume. If you're looking for something to beef up your resume, this is a really great thing to have on there. That being said, if you want to go after online acknowledgements, most companies, I know, for example, Microsoft has an online researcher acknowledgement page where you don't necessarily get a CVE number, but they will still give you a shout out. They acknowledge you by name, maybe your Twitter, whatever information that you want on there. And adding a link to that on your resume also looks great. Another couple reasons, personal development, it's a great way to learn. It's part-time, you can do it as a student, you can do it as a full-time job, or you can do it in conjunction with your full-time job. And if you're looking for something to talk about at a conference or giving a tech talk, talking about a vulnerability that you found is a really great way to go about doing this. Another quick note, if you are looking to give a talk, many conferences, though not all, will prohibit you from dropping an O-Day on a company as a tech talk. So it is likely that you want to participate in a bug bounty program, submit this vulnerability, wait until it gets fixed, and then give that talk at a conference. So there's two different types of bug bounty programs. The first is a company-run bug bounty program. So that's going to be your Apple, Facebook, Google, Microsoft. There are many, many, many more that are not even on here. But this is, for example, a lot of these big companies have the infrastructure and they have the numbers of people that can triage the reports, reproduce it, get it fixed, get these CVE articles out. So this is one way to report the bug directly to an organization that has one of these programs set up. But the other big way is going through a third-party program. You may have heard of some of these before, but the two really big ones is BugCrowd and HackerOne. Essentially, say you have a company, Twitter, who doesn't have the infrastructure set up. They don't want to go through the process of hiring all the people, having the people that can set up a bug bounty program. They'll have HackerOne or BugCrowd set up this program for them. So this is another option. You can go through one of these organizations to report your vulnerability. There's two other that I want to talk about. There's Zero Day Initiative. They're a little unique. They sell a software called Trend Micro, and their business model is if you want to report a vulnerability for Apple, you tell Zero Day Initiative about it first, and ZDI will pay you. For that, they will fix that vulnerability in their software for their customers, and then they'll go to Apple and say, hey, someone reported this vulnerability to us, and we're giving you guys 90 days to fix this. Because they are imposing that timeline on a bug bounty program, they are not eligible for bounty. And this is a really big distinction to make. When you're submitting a vulnerability, they will say, we guarantee that we will fix this bug in 120 or whatever their deadline is. But if you tell them, I'm giving a talk in 3 days, you have X amount of time to fix this, you are making yourself ineligible for bounty by imposing that timeline on them. So another big program that has this is Google Project Zero. This is almost like a non-for-profit organization. Google has a team of people whose main job is just to go out, find vulnerabilities, and get them fixed. They also impose this timeline, but they're not looking to get paid. Their goal is just to go out and get these bugs fixed. All right, so know your rights and know some of the terms before you go ahead and start submitting vulnerabilities. The first I just touched on is SLA, or Service License Agreement. This is the amount of time that a company has agreed to respond to you, to get back to you. This is really important to know. Some companies say, we guarantee that we will respond to your email in 24 hours, or that we will reproduce your report in 10 days. This is really important to know when you're submitting a vulnerability. You want to know what the company has publicly said or agreed to. The next is CVD. This is my other question. Does anyone know what CVD is, or Coordinated Vulnerability Disclosure? This is actually one of my favorite reports that I have gotten for under our Skype bounty. But have an introduction, don't be rude, don't be sassy, have a clear explanation of the vulnerability, and make sure to have a proof of concept. This is my favorite line, waiting eagerly for bounties. It's like the best quote I've gotten. All right, so the next, and this may also seem a little obvious, but the severity matters. If you have a low severity report versus a high severity report, they will give a higher payout on the higher severity. So things to consider, what user action is required? If there are 5 clicks required by a user, that will get a lower payout than a vulnerability with, say, 1 click required by the user. The number of versions impacted and the number of endpoints impacted also plays a huge role in this. All right, so what doesn't matter in your report? These are some of the most common vulnerabilities that we have gotten that, it's really great that you found it. We will definitely take note of it, but 9 times out of 10, I don't want to say all of the time, but 9 times out of 10, these will not meet the bar for security servicing. So the first, social engineering. If you can get someone to click on a link, if you can get someone to, fall for a phishing email, good for you. That's not a security vulnerability as far as bug bounty programs are concerned. The next, man-in-the-middle attacks and physical access. If you already have physical access to someone's device, again, that doesn't always prohibit you, but that is a huge knock against you having physical access to that device. All right, so I have 2 other questions for challenge coins here. Another big one that we get that isn't necessarily qualifying of bounty is self-cross-site scripting. Does anyone know what that is? Or why that might not count? Anyone? Yeah.
Because it only affects you as a user?
That is a great guess, but that's not the definition that I'm looking for here. Anyone? Okay, so a self-XSS basically means that you are requiring a user to attack themselves. So you're convincing a user to copy and paste malicious code into a text field or a text box. And this does not count because it is social engineering, essentially, getting a user to inflict this vulnerability on themselves. So the next thing that we don't count is email header spoofing. So this is essentially relatively easier to do. And the reason that this doesn't count is it is on the user to confirm the identity of the user or of the person sending them that email. So this is another common one that we get that is not eligible for bounty. So lastly, clickjacking. Does anyone know clickjacking? Yes.
So for this, it would be more or less to where you're more or less manning the middling by then trying to connect to a Microsoft service, but instead redirecting them to a page to where you created the site yourself, and you, in essence, all positive links go to a negative site.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. That was a great explanation. So just in case anyone couldn't hear, it's basically getting someone to click on something and redirecting you to a different site than what they initially expected. So this will count if you are able to, add a button or add some sort of trigger in the actual UI of the original website. What is not eligible is if you are able to insert an iframe into a website and then get a user to sign into Facebook or their bank account or something like that. So inserting an iframe is not considered an eligible clickjacking vulnerability. Are there any questions on that? Okay. All right, awesome. So the biggest piece of advice I give you if you are looking to participate in a bug bounty program is to go further. If you find a vulnerability in Apple software, you're going to be so excited. You're going to write your report. You're going to submit that immediately. Yay, get your big payout. My suggestion for you would be to wait a couple of days. Check for variants. See if you can go further with that vulnerability, both with breadth and with depth. So ask yourself, could this vulnerability affect other endpoints? Additionally, could you use this vulnerability to gain more access? Could you use this to go further? A lot of companies will not pay you if your vulnerability report makes them realize that there is a bigger security flaw in their system. They'll be like, great, thanks for submitting, this little XSS vulnerability, we'll pay you for that. When in reality, we realize that that same attack could be used for a much bigger problem. So where do you start? This is great, oh yeah.
But just that go deeper, gain more access, isn't that where it starts to get into a gray legal area as to what you're legally allowed to access? Because you could be going to let's just say office.com, but behind the scene there's access to some private internal backend which how does the legalities work out?
That's a really great question, and for most answers it really depends on which specific product you're looking at and whether that's online or on-premise. So one of my biggest suggestions on here is create your own test tenant and only work on looking at vulnerabilities within your own test tenant. It is likely that may trigger something internally with Microsoft. It is possible for you to go ahead and, sorry, I know I'm not looking at Microsoft specifically, it's just what I'm most familiar with. So it is very likely that could trigger something, but for the most part, if you're able to create your own test tenant and try to isolate that as much as possible, that would be my recommendation to not really step on any toes.
Even if it makes a callback to some centralized server?
It is a gray area. I think it depends so much on exactly what you're doing, and if you're only trying to access your tenant's user information versus doing callbacks and trying to get server information from everyone. Those are two very different things. So saying, I found this vulnerability that gets information from, users within my test tenant, and it could be used, to gain server access. just making sure that you verbalize that it has broader business impact would be my best suggestion.
Okay.
Yeah. That was a great question, though. So that was actually a great lead into my best suggestion would be to creating a test tenant. Also, keep in mind the difference between a vulnerability and a bug. You don't want to be looking at something that is technically by design or the way that the software was created. It's just not something that you agree with or you think that there could be security issues with. You want to find an actual vulnerability within that software. Do you have a question? Yeah, what's a test tenant? Great. So say you are looking for vulnerabilities within AWS. Don't just start attacking their server, like create your own instance. Maybe create some users. I just think of SharePoint because that's what I work for most. Like create your own instance of SharePoint, create a whole bunch of test users, and then go ahead and try to see like, okay, if you're a user versus an admin versus a global admin, what can I click on? What can I do that gives me more information or more access than I'm supposed to have? This isn't necessarily going to give you like the biggest payout. These aren't the most severe vulnerabilities, but if you're looking for a place to start, I think this is a really great place to kind of get your foot in the door and start finding those like low-hanging fruit. Also, so I threw in here a couple of resources that I recommend. I know, just coming to these clubs and doing CTFs and hackathons and things like that, are going to give you a lot of knowledge about doing pen testing, about doing red teaming. So I'm sure you guys already have a whole list of resources on your own, but here's a couple more that I would definitely recommend. All right, so that's all I have for you guys. Do you have any questions for me? Probably asked them throughout, but yeah. All right, well, cool. Thank you very much. I'm just going to leave a handful.